Is Dr. Umar Johnson correct on interracial marriage? What do you think? I'm going to share my opinion in this video. Stay with me.
We could put 100,000 more police officers in every city. We could spend trillions of dollars in these cities, and it would have no effect, no long-lasting effect on many of the conditions that we see. You know why? You first got to defeat the principality. You first got to defeat the rulers of the darkness of this world. Now, again, they're already defeated, but we, the church, must learn how to exercise authority over those principalities. And then, only then, can we release and free the black men that they hold captive.
All right. Thank you for staying with me as I tackle this issue of whether Dr. Umar Johnson is correct on interracial marriage. And welcome to The Gap with Augustus Corbett. This YouTube channel is dedicated to the empowerment and uplifting of African American men. Again, thank you for tuning in. So this is a big, big topic, and Dr. Umar Johnson has been all over YouTube sharing his opinions on interracial marriage. So the question again today that I'm going to tackle is whether Dr. Johnson is correct. Now, I want to bring a few things on the screen because I think it's necessary for us to really understand what Dr. Johnson has said. So the first thing I want to do is I want to play two short clips of Dr. Johnson expressing his views on interracial marriage.
Let me ask you a question, Dr. Umar. Are you totally against interracial relationships?
I am totally against it, and I want to make sure you understand why. The reason I'm against interracial marriage, Envy and Charlemagne, is because marriage is an economic contract. It's an economic contract. Most women do not marry down in status. They marry up. And if you don't believe me, show me a rich white woman married to a broke-ass black man. Have you ever seen a rich white woman marry a broke-ass black man? No, you have not, and you never will. Because marriage ain't about love, it's not colorblind, and it is totally economic. So if marriage is an economic unification in a contract, how can we, who don't have enough already, give so much to the white woman and to white people who have already taken too much when we got all these black women out here who will never get married? Only 1 out of every 4 black women in America will ever taste marriage. And white men.
I want to ask you something, Dr. Umar. For you, have you ever seen an interracial relationship that was acceptable to you?
No interracial relationship is acceptable because we have too many black women who are unmarried. Black women are the largest population on the planet Earth. If you can't find one in America, get it from Africa. If you can't get it from Africa, go to the Caribbean, go to Canada, go to Europe. Why would a black man need to copulate, build a family with anything other than a black woman when you have so many black women available? It is an exercise in self-hatred. There's no way to get around it.
So you heard him in his own words express why he is strongly opposed to interracial marriage. Now, let me back up and make sure you are all familiar with Dr. Umar Johnson. I don't see how you can't be because he, again, is all over YouTube. He speaks all over the country. He's a well-spoken, intelligent child psychologist. And a lot of folks disagree with him, and a lot of folks agree with him. And I guess you could say that about me. I agree with him strongly on some things, and I strongly disagree with him on other things. So I'm going to share with you my opinion about this particular topic, and then I'll let you be the judge as to where you kind of want to fall on this discussion. All right, so first, a little bit about me. Number one, I am a dedicated Christ follower. That means I am a dedicated, committed Christian, and I have been since 1985. So this coming October, I would have been a committed Christian for 38 years. And I'm also a preacher. I've been a minister of the gospel for most of those years. So that is number one for me. That is how I identify first and foremost as a committed, dedicated Christ follower. Now, one of the things I must tell you about that is, so I go to the Bible to get my understanding of everything. That's where I start. And a lot of things the Bible has expressly said or has expressly given, laws or statutes, rules, principles, wisdom for us to know how to deal with a certain situation based on the way the Lord wants us to deal with it. Now, one of the things as it relates to this discussion is if you study the New Testament closely, especially the book of Ephesians chapter 2, you'll understand there that race is not a divine construct. Race is actually a human construct. As a matter of fact, race was invented by white supremacists, and they used racial classifications to justify their oppression and their enslavement and the lynching, murdering, and all the colonialism and all the other stuff that white supremacists have done throughout human history. So I don't ascribe to those racial classifications, again, because the Word of God tells us in Ephesians chapter 2, God classifies people in 3 different ways: Jew, non-Jew, and Christian. Now, I came upon this revelation one day as I was praying, when the Lord asked me, how many races of people are there? And I said, hundreds. And the Lord had me to read Ephesians chapter 2. I read it, and the Lord asked me again, how many races of people are there? I read it again. And this time I said, maybe thousands. And it was at that point the Lord understood that I did not understand how he classifies humans. So the Lord had me to read specific verses in Ephesians chapter 2. And there he showed me that there are 3 categories of people, and it's not based on race. Again, Jew, non-Jew, Christian. So what actually happens is when a person, whether Jew or non-Jew, becomes a Christ follower, that person then becomes a member of the group called Christian, which the Apostle Paul calls the one new man. And the one new man is really an ethnic group all to itself. And it consists of both the Jewish people and members of non-Jewish ethnicities. That could be African American, that can be Anglo-American, that can be European, that can be Arab, that can be Asian, that can be whatever non-Jewish people there are, and Jewish people who accept Christ. They become a part of a completely new ethnic group called Christian. So if we're going to look at classifications of humans the way God sees them, then we're going to have to look at them in 3 different ways. Again, Jews, non-Jews, and Christians. So that's the way I categorize people. And I do that because that is the way the Apostle Paul tells us that God classifies people. So that is the reason why I told you first and foremost, I am a dedicated Christ follower, because that informs everything I know about nearly everything. I start from the Word of God. Now, I am also a lifelong Pan-Africanist. I hear Dr. Umar Johnson saying that he is the prince of Pan-Africanism. Many people don't understand what Pan-Africanism is, but I've been a Pan-Africanist since the early 80s. I became a Pan-Africanist while I attended North Carolina A&T State University, where I began to really understand our connection as African Americans to the African continent. And I saw that as long as Africa was not free, was not liberated, was not thriving, wasn't prospering, being colonized, or this neo-colonism that's going on, as long as that was going on, black people, no matter where they are, the African diaspora, no matter where we are, can never truly be free and liberated because, like it or not, we are connected to the African continent. We are African people. We came here from Africa. And the fact that we were born and or raised in Louisiana or New York State or Georgia or Wisconsin does not negate the fact that our forefathers came from Africa and we are African. So I am a very strong, lifelong, you could say, Pan-Africanist. So I would take Dr. Umar Johnson to task when he says that he's the prince of Pan-Africanism, given the fact that I'm in my 60s and have been a Pan-Africanist for over 40 years or close to 40 years, then I would have to say that I am the father of Pan-Africanism here in America. Of course, I'm being facetious because there have been many Pan-Africanists in this country. Many are much older than I am, and certainly much older than Dr. Umar Johnson. But nevertheless, he and I both are Pan-Africanists, and we understand that we are Africans and that we are connected to Africa, and we are happily so. Then you see that I am an American of African descent, which is a long way of saying I am an African American. I am a part of the African diaspora, and I'm happily so once again. I'm also an ordained clergy member. I have been preaching the gospel, as I said earlier, for about 38 years. I am also a licensed attorney, and as such, I have had lots of dealings with the marital covenant and contract that Dr. Umar Johnson talks about that you just saw him say. All right, so as an ordained clergy member, I have married many people, and as a licensed attorney who has practiced family law, I have been present through folks' divorce proceedings. So I'm very familiar with the economic implications of marriage. And then lastly, I am a published author. I wrote the book, Education Injustice: How Public Schools Fail African American Males. So that's kind of in Dr. Johnson's field there, himself being a child psychologist. We listened to those videos just a few minutes ago from Dr. Johnson, and from what I can decipher, there are 5 main reasons that Dr. Johnson opposes interracial marrying. Number one, on the basis of it is black self-hatred. He argues a black man cannot truly marry a non-black woman without having some level of black self-hatred, some level of black self-loathing toward himself or toward African-American women. In other words, because of the conditioning that we have experienced here, because of the onslaught of degradation and the horrible treatment that we've experienced as being enslaved people through Jim Crow, through systemic racism today, and all the other indignities that have come along with us being in this country, many of us have come through that process self-loathing as Black Americans. In other words, some Black self-hatred. There is truth to that. He also says there are economic consequences of being married. I will address that because there is some truth to that as well. And he says to develop strong Black families. So he opposes interracial marriage because it interferes with the African American community ability to develop strong Black families. And then he says there's an abundance of Black women. Why would an African American man need to marry or want to marry any other woman when there are so many Black women who are available for marriage? And then last of all, he said biracial Black children don't identify psychologically as Black. All right. So those 5 reasons, I think, are the major reasons why he opposes interracial marrying. Now, my response. All right. So to the black self-hatred thing here, that's real. I mean, we don't like to admit it, but it is real. We were taught to hate all things black. In one video, he talked about the doll test that Dr. Clark did in the Brown versus Board of Education case. Again, as an attorney, I'm very familiar with the Brown versus Board of Education case, where Justice Thurgood Marshall, the leading attorney in the Brown versus Board of Education case, had Dr. Henry Clark, I believe his first name was Henry, Dr. Henry Clark, had black children pick out which doll was the ugliest doll based on the color of the dolls. Nearly every one of the black children would pick up the white doll as the smart doll, or the white doll as the pretty doll, and would pick up the black doll as the ugly doll, or pick up the black doll as the dumb doll. And these were small children, and they had already been contaminated by white supremacy and racism. And so we cannot deny the fact that there is in our community some self-hatred. I mean, we see it in the way that we bleach our skin. We see it in the way that we straighten our hair. That is black self-hatred. And it's not just true with black women, it's black men as well, because they too have accepted, many of them, the notion that European women are better, are more beautiful. So this thing of black self-hatred is real. It is real. Whether every black man who marries a white woman does so because of black self-hatred, I don't know. As a matter of fact, most black men marry black women. But those who don't, some of it is related to black self-hatred. And we especially tend to see that the more wealthier black men become. Now, that is a segue into the next thing that Dr. Umar says. There are economic consequences tied to the marriage covenant. How true that is. Here in Texas, for example, where I'm at, we are a community property state, which means the moment you marry someone, the property that you create in that marriage is the property of both of you. It's not a common law state like my home state of North Carolina, where what you earn tends to be yours. Here in Texas, what you earn and what your spouse earns and what you become indebted with, what she becomes indebted with, all becomes a part of the community. And if you all divorce, then the judge has the responsibility, if you can't reach an agreement or if you don't put it in front of a jury, then the judge will decide what is fair, what is an equitable divide of that property. So when Umar Johnson talks about the economic consequences of marriage, it is absolutely true legally, especially in community property states. He opposes interracial marriage also because of the need to develop strong black families. That's a fair position to take. When 75% of black children are born outside of marriage, we need to put a focus on black men marrying black women and having black children, and those children being raised in a 2-parent family. That is essentially the basis of a child becoming successful in this country. God knew what was best for children when he created Adam and Eve and told them to be fruitful and to multiply. He contemplated families consisting of 2 parents, not just one. In my practice as an attorney and in my ministry, I deal with a lot of young men who have been raised in single parent families. And quite often those young men, not all, let me preface that by saying not all, but a great deal of them, many of them, let me put it this way. A lot of the men, a lot of the African American men in prison were raised in single parent families. A lot of the African American men in the streets, the young guys that are in the streets, that are in gangs, etc., they oftentimes have been raised by a single parent mother. And you know, if you're a guy, you know as well as I know that most young single mothers cannot help that young boy become a man. He needs his father. I have 2 adult children. My son, the youngest one, is 29 years old, and I played a critical role in raising him. I have a daughter who is 33 years old this coming July. And, you know, my wife played a huge role, obviously, in rearing our children, but I also played a key role. And I could only imagine, quite frankly, where these kids would be, my kids today, had I not been there. And the same is true with my father. My biological father abandoned me, but another man stepped in when I was a month old and he raised me. And I so thank God for my father, the one who reared me. It made a difference in my life. So Umar Johnson is absolutely right to say that we need strong black families. You look at the number of children that are being reared in unmarried families, in single parent families, and then you compare that to all of the pathologies that you see in the African American community. There is a causal connection between the two. That's what he's putting his finger on. And I completely, totally agree with that. I taught school back in the early 90s. I was a school teacher. I was a high school chemistry teacher. And most of my young black male students just were not engaged educationally, academically. Of course, I turned that around because I had very high expectations of my young black male students. I expected them to come in class and do what they had to do, right? And they responded. A lot of the other teachers just let them do what they wanted to do. Not in my class. Absolutely not. You see, I was taking the role of their missing fathers. I was like the only father that they had. So when they would come to my class, they were now getting the fathering that they were not getting at home. And they responded. So it is true that black men need to be under the same roof, rearing their children. Now, thank God for all you fathers who have children and you're not with their mothers. Thank you. Thank you so much for the work that you do, for being involved in your children's lives, for being a dad away from the family, because even if the relationship doesn't go well with you and their mothers, thank you for still being there for your children. Thank you. I really want to thank you and honor you for that. Those of you who are not involved in your children's lives, get connected immediately. You're really the one who's missing the blessing. Get connected with your children immediately. All right, Dr. Johnson says the abundance of black women makes it also a strong reason why black men shouldn't marry outside of the black race. Again, I would agree with that, right? There are a lot of black women who are looking for a strong black man to marry. Now, yes, of course, I am well aware that you got the feminists out there who are, almost to the point of hating black men. I know that's out there, and that breaks my heart. The last thing we need as a people is for black men and black women to be fighting one another, hating on one another. That is crazy. We're playing right into the hands of the white supremacists to do that. That is a plantation mentality that's still at work in our community. I really, really, really am distressed when I see that. And I see it all over the place. I see it all over the place. So there are an abundance of black women, eligible black women for marriage. And I agree with Dr. Johnson that it's best for our community. And that's where he's coming from. That's where I'm coming from. What is best for the African American community? You know, since we integrated, we don't think community as much as we used to. But we need to go back to thinking about the African American community. And when you got strong black men marrying strong black women and the both of them rearing strong black children, we can turn around a lot of what we see in our community. Are you with me? Biracial black children, he says, don't identify psychologically as black. I don't know about that. You know, he's the child psychologist. Maybe he has some data that I don't know about. To me, without data, that's an anecdotal statement. You know, without seeing the numbers, I really can't comment on that one way or another. I can say again, anecdotally, from my experience, that's not true. In fact, I am 14% European. I had my ancestry DNA done. I am from Nigeria, from the Yoruba tribe. But because of the raping that was going on the plantation, there is 14% European lineage, heritage, blood in my veins. It's not something I'm proud about at all, because I know it came about as a result of trauma, as a result of enslavement. Are you with me? But I don't loathe it, because therein I would be loathing myself. It is what it is. It's the way I got here. All right? So my point is, you could say that I am a biracial black person because of the 14% European blood, and you don't find a more pro-black person than me. You won't find someone who is as committed to the black community as I am. But that's anecdotal. And the biracial folks that I know, you know, have all been very strong black people psychologically and culturally. The ones that I know. Of course, there are others. Tiger Woods, for one, comes to mind. I don't want to malign anybody, but he has made it very clear that he doesn't consider himself to be, you know, black. But again, those are all anecdotes. Those are all anecdotes, to my knowledge. Maybe he has some research. So what would I say in summary? In summary, it is hard to disagree with some of the things that Dr. Umar Johnson has said as to why he opposes interracial marriage. Some of it is just factual. Again, black self-hatred is factual. The economic consequences of who you marry are factual. Strong black families, you know, arising from strong black men marrying strong black women and raising strong black children, that is a fact, and it's desperately needed. And yes, there are an abundance of black women who are beautiful and regal and queens, right? Who need a strong king to come and to help raise strong children and start the transformation of the black community. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I agree with most of what Dr. Umar Johnson says about interracial marrying. There are those circumstances where two people meet of a different ethnicity, they fall in love, and they become this great couple and have these great children. I must, as a Christian, I must approve and applaud such relationships. Because again, I don't see things through the eyes of race. Do I prefer black men marrying black women? Absolutely. Absolutely. But I will not go as far as Dr. Umar Johnson in saying there's never, ever an interracial marriage that is good. No, I won't say that at all. Again, those are my opinions. Thank you for listening. I'm out.